Star Trek Deep Space Nine did its own Lower Decks episode 27 years ago. When fans think of Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated comedy series that flipped the Star Trek formula by focusing on junior officers instead of captains and admirals, it feels like a fresh, irreverent reinvention of the franchise. Yet the truth is, Star Trek has been experimenting with that very concept long before Mariner, Boimler, Tendi, and Rutherford beamed onto our screens. In fact, Star Trek Deep Space Nine delivered its own Lower Decks story 27 years ago, with an episode that not only spotlighted the lives of junior crew members, but also carried some of the heaviest emotional weight in the series. That episode was Valiant, Season 6, Episode 22, which aired in May 1998. While TNG's famous Lower Decks episode 1994 is often credited as the prototype, DS9's Valiant pushed the concept in darker, more tragic directions. Instead of showing young ensigns struggling under the mentorship of senior officers, DS9 imagined what might happen if a ship were crewed almost entirely by cadets, brash, untested, and tragically unprepared for the realities of war. Looking back, Valiant feels like the missing link between the next generation's quieter character study and Lower Decks' comedic reimagining. It's a cautionary tale wrapped in youthful idealism, a meditation on the costs of leadership, and a brutal reminder that not everyone in Star Trek gets a triumphant ending. The premise: a ship of cadets. The episode begins when Jake, Sisko, and Nog, traveling behind Dominion lines, are rescued by the USS Valiant, a Defiant-class starship with a twist. Instead of seasoned Starfleet officers, the entire crew is made up of Red Squad, a group of elite Starfleet Academy cadets. The Valiant's mission is both noble and daunting, to gather intelligence on a Dominion battleship. But since the ship's regular officers were killed early in the mission, the cadets, barely out of the academy, have been running the ship on their own. Their leader, a young cadet named Tim Waters, takes on the role of captain. To Nog, the situation is inspiring. A lifelong outsider who worked hard to earn his place in Starfleet, he's dazzled by Red Squad's confidence and discipline. Jake, on the other hand, is immediately suspicious. He sees not boldness but arrogance, and he recognizes how dangerous it is to give the keys of a warship to teenagers who are more concerned with proving themselves than surviving. This dynamic between Nog and Jake mirrors what Lower Decks often plays for laughs: the difference between true believers in Starfleet's ideals and the skeptics who see the cracks in the system. But DS9 doesn't couch this conflict in humor. It makes it a matter of life and death. Echoes of Lower Decks. In some ways, Valiant is a darkened version of the themes Lower Decks explores with comedy. Both stories emphasize the weight of insignificance. Junior officers are often tasked with the grunt work, feeling distant from the heroics of the bridge crew. In Lower Decks, this is played as a running gag, scrubbing carbon filters, cataloging alien artifacts. In Valiant, the cadet sees the chance to prove they can be just as heroic as Picard, Sisko, or Janeway. The tragedy is that their hunger for significance blinds them to reality. The dangers of leadership pressure. On Lower Decks, Mariner mocks authority while Boimler worships it. On Valiant, Tim Waters embodies the danger of promoting youth too quickly. He's trying to wear the mask of a starship captain, but beneath the surface he's scared, insecure, and increasingly unstable. The fragile bonds of the crew. One of the joys of Lower Decks is watching lower rank officers form a family unit of their own, even when the higher-ups barely know their names. Valiant takes this to a chilling extreme. The cadets operate as a cult-like collective, bound together by indoctrination and blind loyalty. Both shows remind us that Star Trek isn't only about captains making galaxy-shaping decisions. It's also about the lives of those who don't get mentioned in the captain's log. Nog, Jake, and the audience's point of view. At the heart of Valiant lies the friendship between Nog and Jake. Their differing reactions to the cadets reflect two sides of the audience's own perspective. Nog is the true believer. Having clawed his way into Starfleet, Nog sees Red Squad as everything he aspires to be. Their discipline, confidence, and sense of destiny resonate with him. To Nog, they're not reckless kids, they're heroes in the making. This faith blinds him to their flaws until it's far too late. Jake as the skeptic. A civilian, a writer, and someone who never fit into the Starfleet mold, Jake immediately notices the cracks. He doesn't see discipline, he sees indoctrination. He doesn't see courage, he sees kids cosplaying as captains. Where Nog is seduced by the romance of Red Squad, Jake recognizes the danger of groupthink and the cost of blind obedience. Their conflict is the engine of the episode. It's also why Valiant resonates so deeply. It forces the audience to question whether Star Trek's culture of heroism and command is always a good thing. The tragic climax. The cadets' fatal flaw is hubris. Instead of completing their intelligence mission and reporting back, they decide to attack the Dominion battleship themselves. It's a suicidal plan, but Waters convinces the crew with the same rhetoric that inspired Nog. Red Squad was destined for greatness. What follows is one of DS9's most harrowing endings. The Valiant launches its attack, only to be effortlessly destroyed by the Dominion ship. Nearly the entire crew is killed, including Waters. Only Nog, Jake, and one cadet, Collins, survive. The message is clear: heroism without wisdom is fatal. Starfleet's ideals are noble, but they cannot replace experience, humility, or sound judgment. In many ways, the ending of Valiant serves as a grim counterpoint to Lower Decks' endless optimism. Where Mariner and her friends stumble and recover, the cadets of the Valiant stumble and die. Why Valiant still matters. Watching Valiant today, especially in light of Lower Decks, reveals how versatile the Star Trek framework really is. Both shows explore the same question: what about the people who aren't in the captain's chair? But they provide radically different answers. Lower Decks insists that even the lowest-ranking officers can live meaningful, funny, and exciting lives in Starfleet. It humanizes the background characters and makes their stories matter. Valiant warns us that ambition without maturity and heroism without wisdom leads to tragedy. It deconstructs the same idealism that Lower Decks celebrates. Together, they form a kind of dialogue across decades of Star Trek. One lighthearted, one devastating, but both centered on the idea that the universe looks very different from the Lower Decks. DS9's legacy of experimentation. It's no surprise that Deep Space Nine delivered this kind of story. Among all the Star Trek series, DS9 was the most willing to take risks, to subvert expectations, and to tell stories about the costs of war rather than just the glory of exploration. Valiant is quintessential DS9. It takes a premise that could have been triumphant and twists it into a cautionary tale. In that way, it also demonstrates the strength of Star Trek as a franchise. The same shared universe can support an animated workplace comedy Lower Decks, a tragic war parable Valiant, and a lighthearted character study TNG's Lower Decks. All are recognizably Star Trek, yet each brings something new to the table. Conclusion: the long shadow of the Valiant. When Lower Decks premiered in 2020, many fans celebrated its originality in spotlighting junior officers. But as Valiant reminds us, DS9 had already walked